What's up, YouTube? ProTech here. I just wanted to make a video here for you guys, and because I get a lot of questions in chat about what I think about the state of the game, and you know, all that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to make a video and go over this week's community feedback, and just go over how I interpret this, and maybe just add my own suggestions or whatever. So, first thing it says here is current map tweaks. Thank you for your feedback on the proposed map changes. After our consideration and your feedback, we will go ahead with the rock change on the galactic process and the additional blocked off path to and from the center. Okay, but this doesn't really apply to me because I don't play 1v1. The Queen scan range fix apparently was bugged. There's a scan range for units, like before they engage or when they attack, and I believe it was 5. I'm not exactly sure. Let me just take a look real quick and see what exactly it was. Blizzard forgot to increase the Queen scan range, so they will have less range when attack moving. So you need to target fire to utilize their full range. I'm not exactly sure what this was supposed to originally have been changed to, though. Okay, so the default scan range was 5. And they were supposed to have changed it to 7.5. But anyway, so apparently that's bugged. I didn't notice it. I don't really know too much about that. But you know, it just another one of those things, you know, with the cyclone lock-on bug. And it's good this stuff is getting reported, you know, because developers make mistakes, right? And it's good to see that they're acting on this stuff. So apparently there was a Queen scan range bug. I didn't know about it, but apparently they're fixing it. And yeah, so that's good. And then the interesting stuff here is not much has changed here since last week. The overall consensus across our teams, community and pro players, seems to be that it's too early to make a hard call on where the current state of the game is. If ZVT is problematic, we can definitely look into removing the plus light damage of Liberators, and the few things on our radar should also be no surprise. Adept Shade cooldown increase, Warp Prism health nerf, and Ultralisk upgrade nerf by 1. So, again, the problem that Blizzard is having here is that there's just way too many conflicting ideas, right? I mean, read what it says. It says, the overall consensus across our teams, community, and pro players. So you've got 3 different approaches here. You've got 3 different opinions. And so, you know, a lot of people, they think that Blizzard just makes the wrong decision all the time. And while yes, I feel like they also make the wrong decision a lot of time, but you also need to really understand why this is, and it's because there's so much conflicting information out there from the pro players, from the development team, to the bad players in the community, to the good players in the community, etc., etc. So I think that that's one of the things that they have got to change. They just need to design the game the way they want to design the game. Because from what I can see, is ever since they started getting more and more involved in the community, Legacy of the Void came out and the game is in the absolute shitter right now. I mean, it doesn't matter how you look at it, it's in the shitter. The player base is garbage. Nobody is playing it. And half the time when you read these forums, it's just a bunch of whine about how everything is broken and I don't want to play it, etc., etc., etc. So, you know, when they weren't heavily invested into the community, heavily invested into the pro scene, heavily invested, communicating to the community, etc., but the game was doing fine. Think about Heart of the Swarm. Think about Wings of Liberty. I mean, both of those expansions, both of those games were wildly popular. So something obviously changed. And, I'm not entirely sure what the decision was to make the game, to drastically change the game the way they did. I don't know why. Maybe that information's out there. If any of you know where that information is, you could put it in the comments, whatever. But, I mean, from what I can tell, is that because they've started to get more and more involved in the community, we're just... nobody's playing the game anymore. So, something's got to give, right? But anyway, so one of the things that I want to touch on here is it's talking about the Adept Shade cooldown increase. So, I made a post about this back, it was a long time ago, and it got so many downvotes that it actually got removed. I looked for it. I looked high and low for this post that I had made in one of the community feedback archives, and I got 150 downvotes. And I think what ultimately ended up happening was the post got completely removed. And what I said was that the problem with the Adept is not the damage, it's the shade. And the community downvoted me 150 times for saying that. And now, like I said, back when all this happened, you're just going to continue to see the whine because Protoss players are going to figure out that if you nerf the damage by 1, the only thing that they're going to have to do is just build another fucking gateway, right? Well, nobody wanted to hear that. They thought that nerfing the damage was plenty. Well, of course, that wasn't true. And people were still sitting there complaining about the Adept. So I told you so. I told you what the problem was, and you in the community downvoted me 150 times. Now, I understand that a lot of you don't have a high opinion about me. I know a lot of you don't like me. You don't like the way I run my stream. But when it comes to the game, I only want good things for the game. That's what I want, and you should too. So anyway, the point that I'm making here about this, they're talking about this balance, this Adept Shade cooldown increase. That is the answer. That is like the answer to fixing the problem. Increase the cooldown, because right now, with the way that the shade is, it's almost like you have no reason not to do an Adept aggression whenever you play Protoss, because Why not? They never fucking die. They do so much damage, not because of the actual damage output, but because of the fact that they can be in two different places basically at the same time frequently. Like, it's not manageable. Depending on the builds and depending on the type of defense that a Terran player has, at that time of the game when that adept pressure hits, that you cannot split your army. That's why you see these players putting up walls inside of their base to block the shades. Because you just don't have enough army supply at the time that this shit hits to be able to split your army correctly. So I 100% agree that the Adept Shade needs a cooldown increase. I've been saying it for so long, and for whatever reason I get downvoted 150 fucking times on the community forums. Which, okay, whatever. You had to deal with it. You did it. You did it to yourself. I told you what was wrong with it. You didn't listen to me. So now they're talking about this Warp Prism health nerf, right? I don't understand why they think that this is the problem. It isn't the problem. And I know that people are going to disagree with me, just like they did with the fucking Shade. But the problem with the Warp Prism is not the hit points and the shields. That isn't the problem with it. Because why does that matter? You can never hit it. So why do people think that the Warp Prism health nerf has anything to do with the current problem with the Warp Prism? You can't hit it. It's too fast. So what do you think is going to happen if you nerf the health? It is still going to survive. Now the only thing that I can wrap my brain, the only logical explanation that I can think for this is that, or why they're going to go down this route, is punishing mistakes. But the problem with that is, dude, is that a good player at a high level is going to micro his Warp Prism. That's just what's going to happen. I feel like what they're trying to do with the Warp Prism nerf here is just make it less forgiving when you forget about it. The problem with that is, like I just mentioned, if a good player, if you're playing against a good Protoss player, they're not going to forget about their Warp Prism. It's just not going to happen. So they're still going to be equally as cost efficient. And sure, because the health is nerfed, they may have to get out of there sooner than they normally would want to. But at the end of the day, guys, this is not going to solve the problem with the Warp Prism. Just like nerfing the damage doesn't solve the problem with the Shade, or the Adept, I'm telling you that the Warp Prism health nerf is not going to solve the problem. And I also think that if they go through with this Warp Prism health nerf, I mean, I don't know the exact numbers, but I feel like you're going to run into a situation where Widow Mines are one-shotting a dropship. That is fucked. You cannot have that. There is a reason that you can't have Widow Mines one-shotting Warp Prisms, because that would be way too cost-efficient. And honestly, I don't think Blizzard's that stupid. I don't think they would do that. But, I mean, depending on how much they nerf it, you could run into that problem. And you do not want that problem. You cannot have any dropship of any form, whether it's a medevac, an overlord, a Warp Prism, whatever. They cannot die to things in one shot. I mean, unless it's a nuke. But that doesn't ever happen, so who the fuck cares? Anyway, so the way I see it is that if they go through with this Warp Prism health nerf, it's going to be the same thing with what they did with the Shade, or with what they did with the Adept. Nerfing the damage, and then they got to go back and redesign it. So it's going to be the same fucking thing. That's what I think will happen. Because, again, it is not the health or the shields that's the problem. with the Warp Prism. Go back to Wings of Liberty. Go back to Heart of the Swarm. Did we ever have a problem with the Warp Prism? No. When they decided to buff the speed of the Warp Prism, that's when it got crazy. Because with the speed and the pickup radius combined, they overbuffed the shit out of it. So, they need to nerf the speed. The fucking thing has a speed upgrade already, so if you really want to do that, just get that upgrade. So yeah. This proposed Warp Prism health nerf, not the solution. Not the way, and I don't see it that way anyway. And then this last thing here is the Ultralisk upgraded armor nerf by 1. I mean, we've been saying this for a long time. I could never understand why they did this. It legitimately just never made any sense to me. But the problem with this, it wouldn't be as bad if they didn't nerf the Marauder concussive shell. Or not the concussive shell, whatever they fucking shoot. If they didn't nerf the Marauder's damage, this wouldn't be that big of a problem. I don't know why they did that. I truly don't understand. I can't figure out why they went through with that. I don't know. But the Ultralisk is way overpowered, in my opinion. It's very map dependent. So, for example, if you're playing on a map like the Sludge City, and you're in the late game scenarios, and the attack paths are like in the top right and the top left, well, there's a lot of ramps that you have to go up, and there's like tiny little choke points that you have to engage in, and Liberators can take a massive shit all over Ultras. So it's really map dependent on whether or not Ultralisks are just incredibly OP. A lot of these 1v1 maps are really wide open, so it's incredibly hard for Terran players to actually kill the Ultralisk because they can never really engage them with Liberators, which is the answer to them. So, I mean, honestly, I feel like if they were to change the maps, if they were to design better maps, they really wouldn't have to change the armor. But I think that because they are incapable of doing that, I mean, from what I've seen for the last 6 years of playing this game, nerfing it by 1 is probably the best solution right now. So, do I agree with that? Yes. I think the 8 armor Ultralisk is just insane. I don't understand why they did that in the first place, but I mean, dude, guys, seriously, the game has been out for almost a year, okay? It has been out for almost a year, and these are the only 3 things that they have been able to figure out is wrong with the game. We've all been complaining about this stuff. I mean, it's been like in front of your face how obvious this is. It's been a year where we've had to deal with these 3 things that are so obviously broken. So, I agree with the Adept Shade, I agree with the Ultralisk nerf, but I do not agree with the Warp Prism health nerf. That's not the problem with it, it's the speed. So then they go on to say here, we've also pinged Kespa regarding these potential changes and are waiting to hear back as well. So please continue discussions in this area, as we definitely keeping watch. As we are definitely keeping watch. So the formula for success in a game, and it doesn't matter what game we're talking about here, okay? This concept applies for every game that's on the market. And you can disagree with this all you want, but it's true. The formula for success is catering to your casual player base. If you do not have a casual player base, nobody is going to watch the pros. They're not going to do it. They're not going to give a shit because they couldn't be fucked to play the game. And what it seems like is when they say this, particularly when they say we also pinged Kespa, it's almost like, and because you see this all the time in these community feedbacks where they're conversing back and forth between the professional scene. It's almost like they are legitimately balancing the game around the professional scene. And, I could understand that if the player base was much bigger. But because the player base is in the toilet right now, I honestly feel like the last thing that you need to be doing is balancing your game around the professional scene. Blizzard, nobody is watching. Have you not looked at your stream numbers on Twitch? They may be watching in Korea on on live television, but they are not watching on Twitch. Did you see the Home Story Cup viewer numbers? Those were in the toilet. Are you seeing the viewership in the StarCraft directory go down the toilet? Because nobody is watching. So, you really need to cater to your casual crowd. And I understand they're doing a lot of that, with the co-op missions and stuff like that. But guys, that's not what StarCraft is about. StarCraft is about melee. It's about the competitive game. Whether it's 1v1, 2v2, 3v3, 4v4, free-for-all, it doesn't matter. That's what it's about. It isn't about these co-op missions. It isn't about all this other fluff that they're at. Do I think it's cool? Yeah, but why? Why are you doing these co-op missions? You have an arcade section and a massive community that makes this stuff. So why is it that you're allotting time and resources and effort into co-op missions? Which frankly, I'm a melee player, so it's not that fun. I'm not going to make the argument that I didn't have fun playing it. I thought it was pretty cool. But you have an arcade section of your game, and people are remaking Diablo 2 and stuff like that on these things. So why they felt the need to allot resources into that, I don't really know. It doesn't really make sense to me, but whatever. It's retaining some people, I would imagine. But anyway, back to the point. You need to cater to your casual crowd, and if you're spending, from what I can see, just based on my own observation, and I could be completely wrong here, but based on my own observation, I am seeing that Blizzard is catering more to the professional scene than they are to the casual scene. And we can see what happens when they do that. Again, the viewer numbers are in the toilet. And then they go on to say other community update stuff. We wanted to let you guys know that there were questions regarding what else was discussed at the summit. There were many topics, such as what features to work on next, what is the next direction for the multiplayer game of StarCraft 2, esports discussions, etc. But many of our team are still in the process of drilling down into the details of what the feedback we've gotten at Summit would imply going forward. We definitely have a lot of info to share in the coming months, various fronts of StarCraft 2. So, You know what that tells me? That tells me that we are literally going to deal with this bullshit that we have in this game right now for the next 12 months. That's what it tells me. Why? Because if we go back to BlizzCon when they announced Legacy of the Void, it didn't come out for a really long period of time. Well, it did. It came out shortly after. Well, it didn't. Actually, I don't know. I don't actually know. I don't remember when they announced it and when Legacy of the Void released. I don't really remember. Patch 3.0 came out in October, and then I think Legacy of the Void launched in like November or December. So it came out. It came out shortly after. But the features, the features is what I was specifically talking about. The ladder revamp. So the game released in November or December, whenever it was, and it took. Now, I want you to bear in mind that during this time, the player base was going down the pooper. Okay, when Legacy of the Void launched, there was a pretty, they had a pretty high amount of players. But then after the first month, the player base started to go down in a death spiral. And then it happened again the following season. And it just kept going down. And for whatever reason, at BlizzCon they announced the ladder revamp and all this other stuff. And for whatever reason, the people at Blizzard could not figure out that the longer that they wait to introduce voice packs, to introduce skins, to introduce the ladder revamp, etc., 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 the worse off it's going to be. So when I read this last paragraph, it just tells me that the player base is going to continue to go down the shitter, and that whatever drastic changes that they're going to make isn't going to come for another 12 months, and the player base is just, by the time they actually release this stuff, guess what? Nobody cares, and they're all playing Overwatch. So that's what I get when I read this. When I read that last paragraph. That's what I see. So I just wanted to make this video and go over, because people ask me about this stuff all the time in the chat, so I just figured if I make a video, maybe every time they do this I'll start making a video and breaking it down and, telling you what I think about it. But, just to sum it all up, I mean, this is just the same BS. They're not really telling us much. They're just kind of beating around the bush. And the player base is just going to continue to go down the toilet. And by the time they actually change it, it won't matter. Just like what's happening with the current ladder revamp. Like, I don't think a lot of players have come back. So anyway, guys, you can share your gripes and complaints and everything else in the comments. If you disagreed with something that I said, we can discuss it down in the comments. If you liked the video, thumbs it up. If you don't like the video, thumbs it down. And we'll see you next time. Peace out.